The night air lay heavy over Pine Hollow Lodge, the thick blanket of snow outside muting every footfall, every whisper. Inside the great stone hearth crackled, casting dancing amber light across timbered walls hung with wildlife trophies. A circle of friends, wrapped in worn flannel shirts and wool socks, leaned back in overstuffed armchairs, sipping spiced cider pulled from the lodge's rustic kitchen. The only sound beyond the fire was the low hum of the portable generator stationed just outside the back door. Its muted drone a reminder that civilization lay only a flickering battery pack away. Scout, a broad-shouldered brindle pitbull with golden eyes that gleamed in the firelight, lay curled in front of the hearth. She had spent the afternoon chasing snowflakes across the deck and wrestling with stray logs that tumbled from the firewood stack. Now she rested, her muzzle tucked beneath a paw, content in the safe cocoon of their winter retreat. No carbon monoxide alarm hung near the ceiling. The small box of detectors, the ones they'd meant to install, sat unopened on the kitchen counter, their bright red labels untouched. Deep in the night, Scout's ears flicked upward. She rose slowly, her strong shoulders rippling as she shook out her coat. A faint crackle of static pulsed through the silence. An odor, sweet and sickly, drifted from the closed door. Scout rose to her feet, her precise muscles coiling beneath brindle fur. Her nostrils flared as she inhaled again, and her eyes, liquid in the firelight, became watchful mirrors. She padded toward the circle of sleepers, Mark and Lena wedged into a sofa bed, their breaths shallow and even. Gabrielle, sprawled in a rocking chair, her gloves still on. Jamal and Rosa, dozing near the windows, mastiff soft snores mingling with the generator's hum. Scout wove between them, nose brushing each cheek in turn, nudging damp gloves and kicking at blankets, searching for the quickest path to the exit. When nobody stirred, Scout's behavior shifted. She stepped back into the flickering half-light by the back door, pressed her broad chest against the wood, then let out a single deep thump of her tail against the paneling, a code she'd learned to use in emergencies. When none of them moved, Scout's next move was urgent. She backed up, planted her front paws on the door's lower rail, and began to claw at it, nails rasping sharply in the stillness. Then came a low, insistent growl, her first alarm tone. Mark, half dreaming, heard the scratching and roused himself, pulling his flannel shirt over his head. Lena blinked, awake to Scout's guttural bark echoing through the lodge. Gabrielle abruptly sat up, heart pounding, as Rosa and Jamal clambered from their slumber. The group met at Scout's side just as she switched to her highest alert bark, rapid, staccato pulses that sliced through drowsy confusion. Lena flipped on her phone's flashlight app and swept it across the floor. Their breaths came in quick, cold bursts as they realized Scout hadn't been playing. She stood rigid, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the door. Gabrielle fumbled for the switch to power inside the generator housing, but the light from her phone revealed something more urgent. A faint, oily haze began to drift beneath the door, curling across the floorboards like morning fog. A choking sweetness filled the air. Mark staggered backward, nose scrunched in alarm. Colorado, he gasped. She's warning us. In that instant, every lingering moment of warmth and wood smoke turned to danger. Scout pivoted, barking down the hallway, urging them toward the front door, toward fresh air and the starlit hush outside. They moved as one, stumbling past overturned chairs, tripping over a dropped mug, Lena scooping up Jamal's daughter in her arms. Scout led the way, weaving left and right to keep everyone moving. One paw lifted for comfort, one bark urging haste. Outside, the snow lay thick and still, the world a white canvas void of menace except for the faint hum of the generator now stopped, silent as Scout's triumphant howl that rang in the night. In the fresh air, lungs burning with pine cold, the six friends watched smoke and haze pour from the back door. The generator had backfed a hidden leak from the stove's vent pipe, sending lethal carbon monoxide seeping into the living room. Their detectors, still unopened, would never have sounded an alarm. But Scout, with her unmatched senses, had given them the only warning that mattered. They gathered in a tight circle, arms around one another, as Scout circled them slowly, each step deliberate, each breath a reminder that danger could hide in silence. Jamal pressed a trembling hand to his throat, feeling the rush of oxygen fill him. Rosa knelt and cradled Scout's face, tears tracking through the grime of her cheeks. "You saved us," she whispered, voice catching. Scout licked her hand once, soft acceptance, then sat back, tail thumping against the icy porch boards. Behind them, the night held its breath. A relief crew arrived at the generator, sealing the leak and unsealing their living quarters. They donned hoods and masks to re-enter. But the friends emerged to share Scout's vigil, a living sentinel whose unwavering courage had rescued them from an invisible killer. When dawn's pale light gilded the treetops, local news crews converged on the cabin, capturing interviews and footage of Scout's howling sentry. Experts explained the dangers of carbon monoxide, its odorless stealth, the importance of detectors, and the extraordinary event that Scout's acute senses had triggered. Words like "miracle" and "hero dog" wove through the headlines. But for those who'd lived it, the truth was simple. Sometimes the greatest guard against catastrophe is the loyal heart and keen senses of a faithful companion. Presence before catastrophe doesn't always come from machines or alarms. It comes from the living courage of those who stand between us and the unseen threats of the night. In the days that followed Scout's fateful warning, Pine Hollow Lodge became a living laboratory, not just for firewood crackle and winter's hush, but for an unprecedented collaboration between canine instinct and human ingenuity. The owners, shaken by the discovery that their portable generator had silently filled the air with carbon monoxide, invited engineers, public health experts, and dog behaviorists to the cabin to glean every possible lesson from Scout's intervention. Under this unexpected summit, they examined the very path Scout had traced from hearth to back door. Noting how her paws left distinct dust print trails in the morning's frost, each one a step in a canine-charted escape route that technology alone could not have illuminated. By midweek, a team of occupational health researchers arrived bearing pulse oximeters and portable blood gas analyzers. They reenacted the rescue sequence with Scout's body cam footage as a guide, measuring how quickly blood oxygen levels plummet under stealth CO exposure. Volunteers lay on the cabin floor at precise intervals, inhaling controlled amounts of simulated gas while safety monitors recorded their vitals. The data was chilling. Within 2 minutes of the generator's toxic bleed, test subjects' SPO levels had fallen into the danger zone, levels that, in the absence of an alarm, would have led to unconsciousness within moments. By contrast, Scout's single howl had cut response time in half, giving the family a critical head start measured now in saved minutes and uninterrupted heartbeats. Meanwhile, drone pilots circled overhead, capturing infrared imagery that revealed the invisible swirl of carbon monoxide drifting through the kitchen and living space. Their heat mapping overlays, juxtaposed against Scout's body cam trail, created a chilling visual narrative, a toxic fog curling toward the hearth just as Scout bounded away, her back steps mapping the safest corridor out. In repeated slow-motion replays, viewers could see the moment when every guest should have succumbed to sleep but instead jolted awake at Scout's urgent barks. The drama of that pivot, from domestic comfort to frantic escape, played on screens at the lodge's conference room for local first responders and county officials, cementing Scout's behavior as the gold standard for Sentinel intervention. It wasn't long before the county health department issued an advisory urging every vacation rental, lodge and remote cabin to stock and install carbon monoxide detectors, and to consider the untapped advantage of canine companions trained as silent killer sentinels. Pilot training workshops sprang up at the far end of the valley, offered free to dog owners. Professional trainers taught handlers how to condition their dogs to recognize the odorless twinge of CO, not by smell, but by pairing low-dose exposure in safe, supervised environments with a distinct reward sequence, reinforcing the dog's natural avoidance reflex into a reliable alert behavior. Instructors demonstrated how to shape a dog's emergency bark into specific tonal patterns, a low, "stay back" warning, followed by a high-pitched, "evacuate now" sequence, allowing handlers to gauge both the urgency and location of the threat. That first weekend workshop saw 24 local families and their dogs slogged through snow-packed courses, simulating power generator leaks and stovepipe blockages, amid laughter and the occasional yelp of a boot sinking into drift. The participants grew solemn as they realized how easily human senses could fail in the silent creep of carbon monoxide. Scout, as the guest of honor, conducted a live demonstration, hovering near a sealed woodpile rigged with safe CO simulant. Then breaking into her distinctive bark and scratch routine at the precise moment the gas began to seep into the training trailer. The crowd watched in awed silence as participants scrambled to the door, bearing witness to the power of canine vigilance. Building on this momentum, the Smith family and their collaborators launched the Scout Sentinel initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to equipping remote communities with both detectors and specialized training for local dogs. Grants funded the distribution of canine-friendly CO sensor kits, vibrating collars linked via low-frequency radio to household alarms, so that Scout-trained dogs could literally tug their handlers awake the instant danger rose. In particularly fire-prone regions, the initiative partnered with volunteer fire departments to conduct joint drills, integrating Sentinel dogs into standard incident command protocols and ensuring that dogs would have access to emergency veterinary care in case of exposure. Perhaps the most far-reaching outcome of Scout's rescue was a wave of legislative interest. A state representative introduced a bill proposing tax credits for homeowners who installed certified canine assistant alarm systems and completed an approved dog training course. Public hearings featured glowing testimonials from families saved by their Sentinel dogs. And transcripts from those sessions, complete with Scout's original howl, were entered into the record as irrefutable proof of concept. When the bill passed, it signaled a paradigm shift. Canine partners would no longer be mere pets, but acknowledged first responders, their instincts woven into the very fabric of public safety policy. Back at Pine Hollow, Scout herself basked in the quiet glow of the hearth she had once fled. The walls now bore plaques commemorating her achievements: Silent Killer Sentinel, 6 lives saved. One read, "In the evenings, visitors would gather to hear her story, to see the worn, chewed-at door panel where she'd scratched her alarm, and to meet the gentle face that had awakened a community to a new dimension of vigilance." Scout, now in the twilight of her years, lay at the foot of the hearth with a contented sigh, tail thumping softly whenever a new puppy, fresh from the Sentinel K9 workshop, bounded into the lodge to learn the virtues of watchfulness and devotion. And so, from the flickering woodfire light to the legislative chambers downtown, Scout's legacy endured, an ever-widening circle of trained dogs and grateful humans bound together by the simple, profound truth that sometimes the fiercest defender comes on 4 paws. Guided not by circuits or alarms but by loyalty honed to the point of life-saving instinct. Presence before catastrophe, again and always, proved that the quietest sentinel, sometimes a single dog, can illuminate the darkest dangers and carve a path to safety where technology alone cannot tread. In the months that followed that chilling winter night at Pine Hollow Lodge, the story of Scout's silent killer Sentinel bark rippled far beyond those snow-blanketed walls. Word spread quickly through the network of remote vacation cabins, hunting retreats, and backwoods lodges scattered across the Rockies and Cascades. Lodge owners who had once considered carbon monoxide detectors an optional luxury now scoured every crevice of their heating and generator systems. But more importantly, they began to see the irreplaceable worth of a living, breathing alarm on 4 paws. At the insistence of the Smiths and Scouts trainers, the regional chapter of the Outdoor Hospitality Association convened a special summit at a lakeside resort. Dog behavior experts shared the detailed body cam footage of Scout's path from hearth to door. And medical researchers presented reenactments showing how quickly blood oxygen saturation dropped in the presence of CO. Lodge cooks and maintenance crews listened, wide-eyed, as veterinarians explained the threshold of CO concentration that a dog's keen sense of smell, or more precisely, her aversion to the gas faint metallic tang, could detect well before the human nose or mechanical sensors. From this summit emerged the first comprehensive Silent Killer Sentinel certification course. Over a 4-day workshop, dogs and handlers learned to associate a harmless training agent mimicking Co's odor with distinct verbal cues and reward sprints. Each evening, participants practiced in simulated generator sheds and near test furnaces, watching their dogs' ears perk, their tails stiffen, and their entire posture shift the instant the agent was introduced. By the final dawn, even the most skeptical cabin owners nodded in admiration as their dogs demonstrated the precise scrape and bark sequence that Scout had used to galvanize her family to safety. Meanwhile, local building inspectors began including canine Sentinel compatibility in their checklist for vacation properties. A new checkbox was added to permits: Dog Alert Pathway Clear. Inspectors tested cabins by releasing a safe gas mimic around door thresholds, observing whether resident dogs would exhibit the trained escape route behavior. Those that passed earned a bright green decal to display in their window, reassuring renters and owners alike that the lodge was both human-safe and canine-ready. The Smith Scout Memorial Cabin, as Pine Hollow was now informally known, became both a training site and a mecca for Sentinel dog enthusiasts. The family opened a small museum room featuring Scout's worn leather collar, her scuffed paw prints cast in resin, and an interactive display that guided visitors through the exact genetic and behavioral traits that made Pitbulls like Scout so adept at detecting CO. Seasonal retreats were organized for handlers to hone their skills amid real-world conditions: blustery winter storms, power outage simulations, and even timed drills in pitch-black generator rooms. On the legislative front, state representatives introduced a bill to offer tax rebates for lodging businesses that not only installed carbon monoxide alarms but also completed an approved Sentinel dog training program. At a packed hearing in the state capitol, the Smith children, now teenagers, stood at the podium to recount Scout's story, their voices unwavering as they described waking in a haze of poison gas and following Scout's bark to the cold night air. Their testimony moved even the most hesitant lawmakers. And by the end of the session, what had seemed a boutique idea was enshrined in law as the Canine Carbon Safety Act, ensuring that every remote cabin with a wood stove or generator would be required to host a Sentinel-trained dog or approved human alert system. Before long, the Sentinel K9 concept expanded into other realms of gas detection. Industrial facilities that housed volatile chemicals began training facility dogs in the same scrape and bark alert codes. And municipalities piloted programs in nursing homes and hospitals, where senior residents enjoyed the dual comfort of therapy animals and built-in safety monitors. Even the National Park Service reached out to district rangers, offering joint workshops on how their wildlife-trained canines could double as carbon alert partners in backcountry ranger stations and fire camps. Scout herself never wanted for honors. She was awarded the first-ever Hero Hound Medal by the state's Governor's Office of Emergency Services, and her story featured in national safety campaigns alongside smoke detector mascots and fire prevention PSAs. Yet after the ceremonies, she would still return home to Pine Hollow, curling into her favorite spot by the hearth amid the scent of pine and cedar. There, she slept the deep sleep of a job well done, her chest rising and falling in time with the crackle of wood, and in the hearts of all who knew her. Her bark continued to echo, a perpetual reminder that sometimes the finest safety system is the watchful gaze and unerring instincts of a loyal dog standing guard in the dark. As the Sentinel K9 ethos wove ever more deeply into the fabric of safety culture, new chapters of Scout's legacy unfolded, each one a testament to how a single dog's instinct could ripple outward and reshape our relationship with danger. In the remote logging camps of Northern California, workers invited veteran trainers to teach their own kennel dogs to serve as carbon alert and landslide watch sentinels. These rugged Pitbull mixed stocks, accustomed to the scent of cedar dust and engine oil, learned to differentiate the harmless exhaust of logging equipment from the stealthy buildup of CO. Their alert barks cutting through the roar of sawmills with crystal-clear warning. Meanwhile, at the edge of massive gold mining operations in Nevada, wildland fire Sentinel dogs, descended from Scout's original line, joined remote outposts to detect the faintest whiff of ember smoke carried on desert winds. When a rogue spark ignited under dry brush one afternoon, it was an alert terrier pit cross named Emberlight whose frenzied scratch at the gate brought crews sprinting with hoses long before drone cameras or lookout towers picked up the plume. In university laboratories from Stanford to UCSB, interdisciplinary teams built upon Scout's work to explore the chemical signature of early-stage CO and the neural patterns underpinning canine avoidance behaviors. They began logging brainwave data not only during simulated gas exposure but also in the presence of chemical warfare agents, ozone-rich industrial leaks, and volcanic gases, even designing specialized respirator masks that allowed Sentinel dogs to operate safely in hazardous atmospheres while maintaining the clarity of their olfactory judgments. In the bustling tourist corridors of the Rockies, guide outfitters began offering Scout Experience retreats, where guests spent sunrise hours alongside Sentinel K9 teams. Pack horses carried portable generators and CO-mimic devices up steep trails, while lodge dogs demonstrated their alert routines beneath morning mists. Guests learned to read the subtle shift in a dog's stance the instant gas concentration rose, a lifetime lesson in awareness that outlasted the weekend getaway, prompting many to retrofit smoke and gas alarms in their own homes back in the city. Even the entertainment industry took notice. A critically acclaimed documentary, Scout: First Watch, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, weaving together haunting footage of silent danger, flickering cabin generator arcs, the slow slide of cracked earth, the invisible drift of toxic fumes, with the vivid, living presence of Scout's vigilant gaze and her timeless howl. Critics praised the film for its raw power and subtle message that the truest guardians are those who bear no steel or circuitry, but only the boundless fidelity of four paws and a faithful heart. On Capitol Hill, federal safety councils convened to craft a national standard, Canine Early Warning Partnership Guidelines. These guidelines outlined best practices, from vet-approved training protocols to handler certification and equipment specifications, ensuring that every Sentinel dog, whether guarding a backwoods retreat or a metropolitan apartment complex, met rigorous health, behavioral, and performance benchmarks. By the time the guidelines were finalized, dozens of states had integrated them into their own codes, and a new generation of K9 training academies sprouted from Maine to Montana. Back in Willow County, the Smiths watched these developments with pride and profound gratitude. Scout, now living out her days under the shade of her beloved oak, still greeted each sunrise with a leisurely patrol of the front deck, her senses forever tuned to the subtlest whisper of danger. When local children visited to learn about Sentinel dogs, they brought Scout tiny snowflake and paw print cookies as tokens of thanks. She accepted them with her gentle slurp, eyes half closed in pleased acknowledgement, as if to say, "I'm glad you listened." As autumn's gold swept across the hills, the family dedicated a new wing at the Pine Hollow Museum of Safety, the Scout Memorial Gallery. Glass cases displayed her original collar and the chewed corner of the back door frame where she'd clawed her urgent warning. Interactive kiosks let visitors map their own homes, pairing floor plans with animated Sentinel dog escape routes. A central holographic projection loop replayed Scout's bodycam footage in immersive 3D, down to the minute swirl of generator exhaust and the precise angle of her bark alert loose on the snow. But perhaps the greatest testament to Scout's enduring influence came on a still winter's night in a neighboring county, where a family of 5 slept in their hillside chalet as a hidden gas leak crept through the insulation. A young Pitbull mix named Nova, bred and raised under Sentinel K9 protocols, began her low-pitch howl, first alert, then her scratch-at-door routine. Within seconds, the family had tumbled from their beds into thick coats and sprinted into the frosted dawn air. By the time first responders arrived and vented the chalet of lethal vapors, Nova lay down in the snow, chest rising in heavy, grateful breaths, her task complete, her watch fulfilled. And so the circle of Scout's legacy closed and reopened. Twice as wide, twice as deep. A single howl echoed through time, shaping the way the world responds to silent killer threats. In every cabin and chalet, every mine and industrial plant, at every edge where earth and technology falter, the faithful Sentinel dog stands guard, 4 paws firm, ears tuned, heart unwavering, reminding us all that, when catastrophe looms, the first and truest alarm often comes from the loyal courage of a canine companion. Presence before catastrophe lives on, tail thumping against the floor, breath steady in the night, as long as there are hearts brave enough to listen, and paws ready to sound the warning. In the weeks that followed the dramatic rescue at Pine Hollow, the Smiths discovered that Scout's alarm had sparked something far larger than a single family's brush with disaster. Cabin owners across the mountain range reached out, eager to learn how to train their own dogs to recognize the subtle, nearly imperceptible signs of carbon monoxide buildup and other hidden dangers. Scout became not just a local legend, but an ambassador for a new era of canine-assisted safety. Under crisp, clear skies, the Smiths and their trainers transformed the lodge's kitchen into a makeshift classroom. Charts on the wall detailed the molecular properties of CO, its odorless, colorless path through a cabin's small gaps and crevices, and the physiological toll it exacts once inhaled. At the same time, a dozen eager dogs circled the room, pitbulls, mixed-breed rescues, terriers, each paired with a handler learning to interpret the first flicker of muscle tension. The faintest tilt of a head, the backward shuffle away from a lethal haze. In one corner, Scout lounged on an insulated mat, her gray muzzle resting on her paws as newcomers approached for their turn to watch her demonstration. Spotlights of midday sun glinted off her harness-mounted camera, which streamed live footage to a projector showing wall-to-wall time-lapse of that night's events. Old-style black and white infrared clips revealed the generator's hidden leak, the dense haze that turned her family's dreams into a deadly trap, and then Scout's swift departure from deep sleep to frenzied alert. The room grew silent each time that low, urgent bark filled the air, underscoring in every chest-tightening decibel the difference between life and death. By late afternoon, the group moved outside to the generator shed tucked behind the cabin. Trainers wafted a benign simulation gas, identical in density and visual signature to carbon monoxide, into the enclosure while handlers stood at a safe distance. Leashes in hand, within seconds, each dog grew uneasy, ears lifted, posture stiffened, noses darted back and forth. Then came the pattern they were here to master. A firm stay while the gas didn't quite register. Then a first alarm bark when concentrations reached the critical training threshold. And finally the rapid fire warning sequence that meant, evacuate now. You see how she pauses before the howl? One trainer asked. Indicating Scout's breathing pattern, that hesitation is her calibration. She's reading micro tremors in her own lungs, ensuring the threat is real before she screams it out. A handler nodded, stroking her dog's flank. My Daisy did the same thing. She whispered. She caught at a heartbeat before my detector ever buzzed. As dusk fell, the final exercise reunited everyone in the lodge's great room, where Scout led the pack through the exact path she'd used that night, away from the hearth, between sleeping guests, to the back door that opened onto a glittering snowfield. Then, on cue, each dog reenacted the scratch at the wood routine that broke the cabin's deadly silence. Echoing Scout's original urgency, a chorus of barks rolled through the timbered rafters, and in their wake rose something new, an unmistakable sense of shared purpose. A community bound by grateful faith in the quiet courage of their four-legged sentinels. In the weeks that followed, word of the Pine Hollow training spread throughout the region's hospitality industry. Lodge owners in the high country began setting aside a corner of their back decks for Sentinel dog drills, installing simple leash anchors and training stations next to their auxiliary generators. Sales of fully sealed CO detectors soared, but more telling was a new category of gear appearing on outdoor supply lists: bodycams for dogs, vibration-sensitive collars tuned to gas density thresholds, and weatherproof handheld radios programmed to relay canine alert signals directly to 911 dispatchers. Meanwhile, researchers who had once focused solely on mechanical sensors found themselves asking a new question: how could they capture the elusive threshold of a dog's awareness? That unique moment when instinct flips into action? In the labs at the State University, volunteers hooked their canine partners to portable EEG units and pulse ox trackers. Then introduced incremental concentrations of trace gases. Data streams flowed onto monitors, spiking brainwaves, subtle spikes in heart rate and breathing patterns, each dog's profile mapped and catalogued. Analysis revealed that just before the first warning bark, dogs exhibited a distinct shift in alpha wave suppression and beta wave activation, cognitive signatures that could, in theory, be translated into machine learning algorithms for next-generation early warning devices. Beyond academia, local emergency services chiefs began inviting Sentinel dogs to cohabit fire stations and ranger outposts. Here, Scout's successors, Nova, Emberlight, and many others, stood side by side with firefighters and park rangers, living in kennel stalls warmed by the station's burners and eating the same meals as their human teammates. When station alarms rang for a carbon monoxide incident, whether at a private residence or a remote trailhead, dispatchers now sent both engines and a Sentinel alert dog team, ensuring that the first warning might come from a keen nose and devoted heart rather than an audible click. Reports from rural ambulance services noted that these canine-assisted responses cut door-to-evacuate times by a full minute on average, a statistic that, in cases of CO poisoning, translated directly into lives saved and brain cells preserved. One particularly dramatic call came in midwinter, when a snowstorm trapped a hunting party in a secluded log cabin with a blocked chimney. TV news crews filmed the approach of a Sentinel team, handlers bundled into snowmobiles flanked by anxious hounds whose breath curled white against the gale. Scout's lineage, Pitbull lab crosses bred for Sentinel work, barked an urgent alarm through the storm's roar as they neared the Smoke Pines cluster. Within moments, the team had established air exchanges, cleared the vent, and led the hunters out to safety, each guided by the dog's first unmistakable howl. By spring, the Sentinel dog model had been adopted by hundreds of remote hospitality venues, fire districts, and even urban high-rises where parking garage CO risks had once gone unchecked. A new wave of public service campaigns, airing on local radio and highway digital billboards, reminded drivers and homeowners alike that every cabin needs a Scout, showcasing brief clips of Scout's original rescue bark, capped by the message, "Install detectors. Train your dog. Be the first to know." At home in Willow County, the Smiths watched it all unfold with wonder and a profound sense of relief. Scout, now slowing under the year's gentle toll, greeted spring's thaw with a leisurely stretch on the porch. Neighbors waved on their morning jogs, confident that if Scout did not bark, their home was as safe as any generation's wits could make it. When the Smith children returned home on summer breaks, they found the cabin busier than ever, guests practicing Sentinel drills in the living room, trainers fine-tuning CO simulators in the backyard, and Scout herself, dignified matron of the lodge, presiding over each gathering like the guardian she had always been. And as the sun dipped behind the pine-clad ridge each evening, Scout would lift her head in response to the distant drone of an outboard generator somewhere beyond the valley, closing her eyes as if to savor the gentle hum that no longer hid danger but heralded community safety. In that peaceful moment, the Smiths understood that Scout's greatest gift had not been a single moment of alarm, but an entire culture of awareness she had helped create, one in which the quietest Sentinel, a loyal dog standing watch in the dark, could light the way toward a world more vigilant, more connected, and ultimately more secure. Presence before catastrophe, Scout had shown them, lives on in every bark, every trained paw, every home fortified by the living courage of a faithful companion, and that lesson would echo across cabins and cities for generations to come. In the weeks after that terrifying night at the snowbound cabin, word of the Pitbull's life-saving Sentinel bark spread through every winter resort community in the region. Cabin owners who had once regarded carbon monoxide detectors as optional, nice-to-haves, began installing them at every hearth and generator station. But it was the idea of a loyal canine guardian that captured imaginations most powerfully. Frozen lakeshore lodges and mountaintop chalets alike reached out to the Smith family and their trainers, eager to learn how to teach their own dogs the precise scratch at the door, bark and evacuate routine that had stormed Mark and Lena from their beds in time. At Pine Hollow Lodge, the Smiths organized the first Silent Killer Sentinel Symposium, inviting the local fire chief, a carbon monoxide safety engineer, veterinary behaviorists, and dozens of dogs with their handlers. Over 3 days, participants dissected video from the night of the rescue in painstaking slow motion, Scout's ears twitching at the subtlest whisper of gas, her muscles tensing, the single forward paw that signaled her decision to abandon comfort and sound the alarm. Slight head tilts, barely visible, were revealed to be critical calibration cues, signs a dog was double-checking before committing to a full emergency alert. Each evening, under lantern light and the hush of falling snow, workshop attendees practiced in the makeshift gear shed behind the lodge. Trainers pumped a harmless carbon monoxide analog into the space, while handlers guided their dogs to the exit path and rewarded them for executing the emergency routine precisely as Scout had. A low, single warning howl, a sharp scrape at the door's base, then a frantic bark sequence to drive the humans outside. By dawn, dogs of every breed, Pitbull hound crosses, Labrador Malamute mixes, agile terriers, had mastered the pattern, earning their handlers nods of approval and new, Sentinel K9, certificates. Meanwhile, the county's public health department mobilized. Health officers visited every rental property, reminding owners that CO is odorless, colorless, and deadly, even more treacherous than the blizzards outside. They distributed illustrated guides co-authored by the Smiths, showing step-by-step how to condition a dog to recognize CO's faint chemical whiff and funnel that instinct into a life-saving behavior. Local veterinarians offered free, Sentinel dog, wellness checks, ensuring that no canine sentinels went into service with untreated health issues that might blunt their senses. Within a month, more than 70% of the lodges in the valley had both functional detectors and at least one trained dog on patrol. At the same time, the Scout Foundation, established to honor the original Pitbull's heroism, launched a pilot program supplying free training grants and sensor harness kits to families in remote areas where mail-order alarms often arrived too late. In partnership with a regional outdoor gear manufacturer, the foundation developed a vibration-sensitive collar that would pulse gently against a dog's neck strap the instant CO levels crossed a predetermined threshold, backing up the dog's own alarm barks with a private handler alert. That collaborative project won an Innovation Award at the annual Countrywide Search and Rescue Expo. Heralded as the first true marriage of canine instinct and wearable technology. Not to be outdone, academic researchers seized the opportunity to study sentinel dog behavior in more controlled settings. Teams at the State University conducted double-blind studies in specially ventilated chambers, measuring the precise ppb, parts per billion, at which dogs first shied away from the gas and the exact neural signatures of their alert response. The results, published in the Journal of Applied Animal Cognition, showed that dogs like Scout detected company at concentrations nearly 10 times lower than the most sensitive commercial alarms, and did so consistently even with varied background odors, firewood smoke, cleaning solvents, cooking fumes, proving their remarkable resilience and reliability. That summer, as snowmelt cascaded down the mountains, the Sentinel K9 model expanded into other hazard zones. Vineyards plagued by silent leaks of propane in frost mitigation systems enrolled dogs in mini workshops to learn the same bark and scrape alerts. Urban maintenance crews used Sentinel dogs to patrol parking garages, sniffing out carbon monoxide hotspots beneath idle engines and ensuring commuters' safety. In one dramatic rescue, a young father collapsed in his car during a freezing night in a remote garage, his Labrador mix, trained in the Sentinel protocols, repeatedly barked and pawed at the window until a passing security guard noticed and called paramedics. Another life saved by a steadfast dog. Back at Pine Hollow Lodge, Scout herself settled into a quieter, but no less honored, role. Now in her elder years, she spent long afternoons basking by the big picture window, the golden light illuminating her brindle coat. During busy training weekends, she received new ribbons, each one a testament to lives that her influence had spared. Guests would stroke her muzzle, whispering thanks, and smile as she yawned, her chest rising in contentment rather than alarm. When winter returned, the valley braced for heavy snow, but the cabin stood safer than ever before. Hiking trails that once echoed only with howling wind now carried the deliberate clack of sentinel dogs on patrol, pitbulls scrabbling at cabin doors, collies pacing generator sheds, German shepherds standing guard at stove vents. Each bark that cut through the frosty dawn was a promise renewed, that no family would sleep unaware, that every home would stand a little stronger against the silent killer in the night. And so, Scout's final legacy took shape not merely in policy or technology, but in the countless watchful eyes and listening hearts of dogs and humans united, ready, at any moment, to echo her first courageous alarm and prove once again that presence before catastrophe is not just a slogan, but the very essence of true guardianship.